Well, thank you all for having me here. And as I look around the room, I'm impressed that the group is out here. I know that Surrey County is in good hands because there's a ton of movers and shakers here that just really get it done. Our budget this year spends $29.7 billion. And then it's anticipated it'll be $30 billion next year. That's an increase of 10% over the last biennium. The state is growing. And this budget is prepared and printed. It is ready to be voted on with one exception. Does anybody know what the exception is? Entertainment centers and video lottery terminals. And that is something that we in the House have said, no. That should be a standalone bill. We need to look at it. We need to analyze it greatly. It is not something that should be holding up our state budget. Entertainment centers were going to be basically casinos, but at the same time you open the casinos in these 4 Tier 1 districts, you would also open hotels and restaurants and some shopping. We've not looked at the details of it. We were handed the actual language like 2 weeks ago, and we're told we can't make any changes or adjustments to it, to where the revenue comes in, to where they'll be located. We're in the House, we're not allowed to participate in any of that discussion. The other thing is in an effort to get rid of sweepstakes places, you know, the little places where you got the little things, they would like the education lottery to start running them. The education lottery would have video lottery terminals at very specific designated locations, and anybody who did not have that seal of approval from the education lottery would not be able to run one. That would help. We've determined that gambling would be legal, and this is the only way you can do it. And again, we're not real keen on that either in the House. We don't think we should turn North Carolina into Las Vegas. And that's the stalemate on the budget, okay? The budget itself is great. We've agreed on everything else in the budget. Salaries and benefits over the next 2 years. There's a 10.2% raise for teachers. The average teacher pay would increase to $62,650 a year. State employees, school employees, and I think all state employees get 4 to 8 weeks of paid parental leave for when you have a child or you adopt. It restores master's degree pay for teachers. There's a 7.5% raise for other state employees that are not specifically mentioned. There's an additional 2% raise for state jobs that are hard to retain and recruit. There's a 9.5% raise for school bus drivers. There's an 11% pay raise for state highway patrol, but when you also figure in the step increases for highway patrol, they're going to be raised about 24%. We're having trouble keeping highway patrolmen because police are trying to defund the police. We don't have police officers. They're recruiting. We're training them on the state level, and then cities and counties are offering them jobs at greater starting pay than we can, so we got to keep our highway patrol there. There's an 8.5% raise for correctional officers because they are in the line of fire, and we've had several injuries and we can't get correctional officers. So it's an 8.5% raise, but with their step increases, their own step schedules, they'll get 18.75%. The UNC system and community college employees will get 7.5%. And then there's a 2% COLA for retired state employees. As I said, we're accelerating the reduction in taxes. It'll be 4.5% tax rate starting in 2024. And we increased the child tax deduction by 20%. There's a refundable adoption credit of $2,000 per child. We have a lot of children out there that are going to need adopting. We have a lot of issues in our foster system, and I'm working through a lot of those in a very separate bill. Their franchise taxes for businesses are reduced by 33% over the next 5 years. And there is no longer a state privilege tax on professionals. I was a professional, I had to pay $75 a year just because I'm an attorney. That just seems wrong, but again, I'm retired now, so I don't have to pay it anyway. Some of the people in Mount Airy will be very happy to know that historic and mill rehabilitation credits are now made permanent. I know we've had a lot of use of our historic properties for that. K-12 education spending this year will be $18 billion. There's $40 million in there for safety grants, trying to make sure they're there. We're requiring schools to put their academic materials online. And there's $7.8 million to reduce meal debt plan. We're talking about children who can't afford and schools can't keep covering the costs, so there's money in there for that. We are going to, the budget has a provision to prevent COVID vaccine mandates for K-12 educations and community college. We will not force you to get a vaccine. We saw that the things we didn't really help during COVID. It hurt the education system more than helped. It caps class sizes for 4th and 5th graders and funds additional teacher assistance. It expands the eligibility and the opportunity for opportunity scholarships. It adds $45 million for smaller school systems and $10 million for combined school health personnel. We keep hearing about health crisis and mental health crisis in the schools, trying to get more personnel into there. In higher education, there's $15 million to waive fees for community college workforce courses and $40 million to increase courses that lead to a degree in healthcare. We've done that in both the UNC system and the community college system. We need more people in healthcare. There is a program in here to encourage doctors and medical personnel with a loan forgiveness program to go into underserved areas. We have a lot of places where they can't get to doctors or healthcare providers. So we're doing that. We've expanded teaching fellows programs and given longer loan forgiveness in some of those requirements. It's under health. There's $30 million that's going to expand loan repayments for doctors and nurses to serve in rural and underserved areas. $25 million to establish a rural hospital stabilization fund. Our rural hospitals are dying unless they're being gobbled up by major systems. There's $29.2 million to combat and respond to the negative impacts of opioid. And I know Surrey County was getting a specific $1 million because we are in an area that has greatly suffered with that. There's $120 million to increase the wages of workers assisting individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's $12.6 million for the Carolina Pregnancy Care Fellowship and $2.9 million of grants to cover pregnancy center services. There's $10 million to provide community outreach, consultations, and care for women experiencing under-supported pregnancies. $40 million, local law enforcement's getting some grants to help with their public safety. There are funds for new investigative positions to combat fraud in Medicaid, especially if we're going to expand Medicaid. And remember, Medicaid expansion does not happen if this budget does not pass. Medicaid expansion was tied to that. We're moving the SBI out of the Department of Public Safety because sometimes they have to investigate officers. So the SBI and the lab will go into a separate agency and be on its own. We've $7.2 million for the State Highway Patrol to encourage and advance their programs and causes. $15 million to extend programs that help firefighters with cancer. Apparently, cancer is very common in firefighters, particularly even volunteer firefighters. And so this is a program specifically designed toward that cancer research. For our military and veterans, we've got $2 million to support the National Guard, $3 million for the Veterans Justice Intervention Program. We actually have, I think now, 2 veterans courts that if veterans get in trouble, they go there and they seek treatment and they complete a program, and then their conviction can be dismissed, or they can get probation instead of actually serving jail time. And we are a model program for that based on some things I saw in other areas. There's $1.5 million for military missions in action that will assist disabled veterans and military families. And then we had promised the military that their children would be able to go to college. So there's $27.2 million for scholarships for those children of wartime veterans. We put in $3.5 million because for the first time, we're going to have voter ID. When you go to vote, I've been to vote so often that people say, where do I need my ID? Where do I need to show my ID? Where? You don't have to. This year you do. And they're saying it's making it difficult on people, so we put money aside to do that. We have prohibited the State Board of Elections from entering into ERIC, which was a problem that was somewhat controversial. And we also said you don't take bucks from Zuckerberg. You know, we pay for state elections. We pay for state elections. Transportation has a separate source of funds, highway funds, but we have put into them, because there's not enough, $1 billion for road maintenance and $773 million for construction projects. $300 million for modernizing rural airports. See, I'm terrible when I read. $1.4 billion for bridge construction and roadside litter removal. Some people are going to be able to now get your driver's license. They'll be good for 16 years instead of 8 years. I got to look at that a little more. And it allocates funding towards modernizing customer service experiences at DMV locations. In Raleigh, they're experimenting with putting some DMV locations or DMV kiosk in the grocery store. So you go in and you renew your license while you're buying your groceries. Okay, economic development and infrastructure. $2 billion for water, sewer, and stormwater improvement grants. And I believe Pilot Mountain and Mount Airy are both getting some very specific grants in that. You've got $469 million for economic development, $7.6 million for rural broadband expansion, and I understand Wilkes County was getting some of that from last year. These are new ones. $300 million for mega sites, and $100 million for select sites to support manufacturing hubs. $5 million to support employees due to the closure of the Evergreen Paper Mill in Canton, Virginia. That whole town was based on that mill. $4 million to One North Carolina Small Business Program, $50 million to NC Innovation to support university research commercialization efforts. This was a little bit of a problem early in the budget, but we worked it out. They wanted the group, it's a private group, that wanted to go to the colleges and say, you've developed something, but you don't have the ability to get it to market. So what they wanted us to do was give them $1.5 billion to put in a fund, invest it aggressively, use the profits to try to get that money out there. Then we come to find out they really aren't even established and set up yet. So we've given them $50 million to get started. The $1.5 billion will be a strict endowment. They're not supposed to be allowed to invade that, but to only use the interest that it's earned. So that's an interesting thing to watch for. We've got $40 million for farmland preservation, $4 million to address emerging compounds, which we don't seem to have had as much problem here, but the PFAS movement down on the coast where there was the spill, they're wanting to do that. We got increased funding for parks and recreation. That's something we do. The trust fund and the water and land resources, we've just expanded our walking trail, and I know Pilot would like to see about expanding their walking trail. $76.5 million for disaster relief and recovery, and that's in addition to whatever we've gotten from the federal government, because the federal doesn't always cover everything. We have prevented state funds from being used for abortion. We've stopped the Green New Deal and cap and trade energy mandates, and we've prohibited requirements on controlling emissions on new motor vehicles. Got a new car, it shouldn't be having emission problems at this point. So that's sort of highlights of our budget. I could have seen about bringing one in here to you. I think we may be up to 3 volumes now, and I assumed you didn't want me to read that, because you can see how bad my reading is as to begin with. So really what I'd like to do is to see what kind of questions you might have. Come on, somebody. And it doesn't have to be about the budget, it can be about anything. Okay, Sam and then Joe.
We're one of the fastest growing states in the nation, I think we're number 3. How is our infrastructure going to handle that growth?
Thank you for the question, and we've been concerned about that. Technically, towns and cities are supposed to deal with their own infrastructure, but the state has been contributing lots of funds, as I talked about water and sewer. The counties are supposed to build schools, and the cities are supposed to build schools. We've started building some schools because they didn't have the funding necessary to do that. We're trying to answer those questions, but we need city and counties to step up as well, trying to help us with that infrastructure. Roads, bridges, roundabouts. I've got to do that up on 89 with sheets, but anyway, getting off track there. But what are the specific needs that you're finding that you have? As I said, we've increased our revenue, 60% going to education, 40% going to everything else I said. What are the specific needs that we have? And that's what we keep coming back and asking. What are the specific needs that should be the state's responsibility? And we try to do them as far as we can. We try to incentivize public-private partnerships as well. That's a lot about the historic tax credits and renovating buildings and making them into condos or apartments or livable spaces or even new business spaces. So, Joe?
Is there any movement in Raleigh to consider privatizing ABC stores?
That becomes a controversial issue at times too. There are some works toward lightening up on what we are doing. There actually was an ABC bill last week that talked about Sunday sales, talks about other things that the liquor store can sell in addition to that. But in terms of full privatization, I don't see that in the near future, but I see it being looked at constantly. We get the same thing from breweries. We get the same thing from distilleries wanting to advance their product without having to go through all the ABC regulations. But it'll take a little bit of work to turn that completely around. John?
So you mentioned the budget has been approved and the gaming bill should be separated. Is the budget based on any profit or monies that would come from the gaming bill in order to do these things that you're talking about?
I had heard that there was a potential, but you won't have these gaming up and producing income for at least a year. So it shouldn't be tied to that. And the budget, all these factors have been approved in the budget. Normally the things we're fighting about are very different. But the Senate's position is if gaming and video lottery terminals are not in the budget will not pass. And we go back as the House and say they should be separate things. We're happy to consider your proposal. We want to run it through committee like we normally do. We want to have some input and say. We are 120 members that have our own ideas. So yes, that's the stalemate. And it's almost a personal thing. I want it in the budget, you don't. Where should it be? When do we give in? Who gives in? How do we resolve this situation? And truly, there are 170 people trying to work on that. How do we resolve this situation to get past it, to go ahead and get a budget done? But when you've got a couple of people who say, it's my way or the highway, and they're the ones who call up the vote or not, then you do have that problem. So I didn't come in July because I knew you wouldn't hear about the budget. I agreed to come on now. I really thought I was going to have to cancel on you because we were talking about taking the budget and voting on it on Tuesday. And if you vote, well, you bring it out of committee Tuesday, you have to vote Wednesday and Thursday. Constitutionally, we have to vote on different days. So I couldn't have been here. I wish I weren't here because if I weren't here, we'd be passing a budget. So, you know, I'm glad to be with you guys, but I would love to see a budget and get ready to be done with that. Okay, Chad.
Representative Stevens, thank you for being here. If you're not retiring, as you look into the future, just personally in the role that you have, what excites you about what you got going moving forward?
I love to be a problem solver. And if I ever make this about me, where it has to be what I want, what I have to do, then it's time to quit. One of my favorite roles as Speaker Pro Tem is I take all the freshman legislators, particularly Republican freshman legislators, and make them into real legislators. I give them that step up. I give them that orientation. I work with them for up to 4 to 6 months. Every week we come in and we start with, okay, let me tell you where the bathrooms are because they are hard to find in the General Assembly. I talk to them about, you know, when you sit on the floor, what you're supposed to say and how you have to dress and what you wear, up to we're now into these policy discussions privately because there are 72 of us in caucus. So if I've got 12 freshmen, I can answer their questions more quickly and help our caucus run well. And making those relationships is incredible. I've got lots and lots of good friends now. I have done this for 4 sessions and they're all still my friends. They're all still my friends. That's what excites me about this. And it excites me that we are making North Carolina a better place, whatever it takes. And when Tom Tillis was our speaker, when we first became the Republican majority, one of the things he did was go around the state and talk to businesses about what's in your way, what regulations can we cut out. And I still do that at every meeting I go to. I can't guarantee you I can pass it, but I want to hear from you. What's in your way? What's in your way to going forward? How can we help you move on? A simple idea, a complex idea. I've gotten an idea the other day of a program they want to do where kids who might be dropping out of school, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, get to an internship program. We put them to work half days, school them half days. The industries are dying for that. They said, we want kids who are trained and ready to come to work. You know, just teaching them to be there on time. You know, come in at 8, stay at school till 12, go work till 5. We have kids today that don't believe they have to work. I mean, I was talking to a local business person. He's got a great electrician. His problem is his electrician doesn't want to work 20 hours a week. That's all he needs because he lives at home with mom. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am, I'll come back to you.
No, this goes off what you were saying with the intern program, and I know Polly would have more to say about this, but we've actually started some programs like that through Mountaineer High School and I believe some other schools in the area. But that is a really great thing. We actually had a student come in and she had to learn to come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was just like, do you not have to go to school at 8 o'clock in the morning? But it's just funny what people do have to learn, and we don't really think about it.
And then being shut down with COVID, why can't I just sit at home and work? Why can't I just sit on my computer and do everything I need to do? You know, we've changed our culture. We need to change it back. Community colleges, what can we do for you to help you get those people up and ready to go right away? And I will tell you, David Shockley, he's not here, but he's amazing what he's done for the community colleges. One of the first programs, too, we started looking at was education. K-12 was in a silo, community college was in a silo, university was in a silo. We actually had university professors look at some high school tests and said, could you answer these questions? And they would say, oh, the questions aren't answered the right way. Well, we need to know why. Why aren't y'all communicating? Why aren't you getting it done? Same thing with community college. You want to go from high school to community college, there's some adjustment, but community college should be ready. And instead, community college is having to test to say, are you ready with your math skills? Are you ready with your English skills? So why aren't we getting those groups together and making sure they meld into one? The other thing we're looking at is university system. We got to change the university system. I mean, we have great universities. I love them. But what incentive does the university system have? One, to graduate you in 4 years. And number two, to graduate you with something you can get a job in. Zero. They keep the kids, the average graduation rate after 5 years in the overall university system. Now, some of the universities are a lot better. In the overall university system, 40% of kids graduate after 5 years. Same 40% coming in need remediation. Universities pick their students. Universities need to get those students out there in a job that they can get so they can be out of debt and get ready to go to work. We've talked to the universities. We're working through that to say it's going to be your obligation when a student comes in and wants to take basket weaving. They need to know what kind of income they can make and how they're going to pay their school debts back. When they want a degree in rock history, great. What are they going to do with it? How are they going to get a job? How are they going to pay that school debt back? Well, they're going to go look to the government to pay for it? That's not right. And that's the positions we need to keep and maintain. You're right, urban flight, but our problem is our urban cores are incredibly liberal. They don't understand what hits them in the face, that this policy is working, that this 10 years of getting people back to work, that this 10 years of fiscal responsibility has made our state stay great. Stay great. We're there and we intend to continue forward with those policies. I welcome any idea you've got. But just like I was talking to you about 9, 10, 11, I went to North Surrey High School and they were doing an on-site build for Habitat. I talked to the kids. They were enthralled. They were kids ready to drop out, but they were learning carpentry and electrical skills. And he says, even if I don't do it, if I don't go on to Surrey and do it, I can build my own house. You know, I can do some work on my own. They felt important. Kids there were doing cosmetology at school. I mean, we've got to engage them. You know, a long time ago they did No Child Left Behind. That's a great theory. But if you don't leave any child behind, are you dragging the rest of them back to be with that child? I don't think that was ever the intent. I think it was to pull them along as far as they could come and move forward from there. So it's reinventing that wheel and getting it out there correct, okay? Getting it out there in a way that we can do it. Yes, sir.
William Hawkins, Surrey Electric.
Sure.
In the last year, we've become more aware of threats to our physical and information infrastructure. Can you talk about what you've done to protect that and what you might consider next?
I know they're looking at all kinds of ways to do that security, because a lot of it happened down there in Moore County and around that area. We've seen some happening down toward the others. I did do a bill specifically at the request of Surrey Electric about theft. People going inside there and stealing things, and what they stole was not nearly worth the damage that it did. So we increased the penalties for that. But we also have a lot of cybersecurity work, going on, and then trying to figure out how we can track back those groups. So it is a lot of, not necessarily, we don't know legislation that's needed at this point, but we are putting more resources and work into the people who can get into it and do something. Yes, sir.
In respect to nuclear power, I wonder if there's any kind of consensus building in the legislature to move forward or hesitation for that?
We have adopted an energy policy that says all of the above. There are ways to do everything, keep it cost effective, consider green, consider solar, consider nuclear, consider the future, what we can do. I mean, we can talk about windmills, but nobody on the coast wants windmills in their yard. We can talk about windmills, you would put them on the mountain. I don't think that would help our view of Pilot Knob. Plus, they don't work that often. You know, we've talked about all kinds of alternatives we can do, so we are exploring them, and we are still in all of the above energy issues in North Carolina.
But no consensus on nuclear?
No consensus, but I do believe Duke is still working with nuclear. Oh, come on. You want me to entertain you? Now's the time. I'm just kidding. We're at the entertainment portion of the show. They tell me I got 10 minutes if I want it, or I can let some people go. Dr. Morrison.
Well, I would like to ask a question. So education always waits on the budget to be passed. So if you were to look in your crystal ball, because it sounds like you put a lot of money into teacher pay, state employee pay, and critical needs like bus drivers. So that will be absolutely critical for us to meet budget this year and to keep teachers in their positions. What is your percentage of yes that you think this will be passed in the next week? Like, do you think we're close to 20% passage or 80%? What do you think? And 50% doesn't count.
It'll be interesting. I actually am going to have a phone conference tomorrow with a bunch of the people who are strongly opposed to passing the budget with the gambling in it. So that'll give me a greater feel. If I were looking at what I saw on Monday and Tuesday of this week, I would say less than 5% chance it'll pass next week. You know, I'm not optimistic. It's going to take a break somewhere that's not happening yet. You know, again, regardless of whether we pass a budget, we're not like the federal government. There is no fiscal cliff. You continue to run on what you have. We continue to operate on your education budgets that you have. These increases will be great, and they will be retroactive when they come in, but you're not without funds. So yes, I'd love to see it passed, but are you ready to turn us into Vegas to do it? And that's truly an issue. That's truly an issue. I try to stand where I think my community is, and that's a no to a gaming budget, to a gaming bill that I haven't even had the opportunity to weigh in on, or that you haven't had the opportunity to see it. You cannot go online and find a copy of that bill, I don't think, because we were just handed it 2 weeks ago. So I don't know that it's made public exactly what it will do and how it will do it. And we haven't had much chance to argue about it. So I'm sorry. It's not the answer you wanted, but the answer you got. I've always believed in being honest with people, even when I was practicing law. Yeah, how do you think I'm gonna come out in court? Well, I'm not gonna promise you the sun and the moon. And actually, I have found that I'm better off to tell you the worst, because then you're pleased when the other stuff happens. And you're not disappointed when the bad stuff happens. That's I'm a real pessimist that way, because I think it works. All right.
What does the state think about work requirements or the ability for those able-bodied people that are suddenly eligible for Medicaid simply because of income eligibility? What do you think about those people trying to find a job? What's the General Assembly's take on that with this growing expansion of Medicaid expansion?
We have been all over it. We're looking for every conceivable way to get them to do it. We've asked for waivers from the Medicaid people. As part of the budget, the DHHS director is required to refile every 6 months or a year to try to put in the work requirements. We're doing everything we can. This is a federal government purse string, and we're trying to tie it down as tight as we can, which is why we didn't go to expansion a lot longer ago. I think, as you've seen, Obamacare and Medicaid has risen our health care costs because they still want to be paid the same, so they got to get it out of somebody's pocket. I mean, my Blue Cross Blue Shield's paying a lot more than they used to because they're subsidizing others. I mean, it's not free money no matter where you put it. And it's the federal government's ability to say, you will accept these patients and you will accept them at less than what it costs you to provide the care, and you got to make it up somewhere else. You do that or you don't get hospital privileges. You do that or we're going to keep you from other money. So I think it's a vicious cycle, but it's a federal government created cycle that we got to have the strength and energy up there to get out of. So
employers are having to find creative ways to get people to apply, you know, and then you hope that they're able to do the job they're applying for, but then my dad used to say, if you don't work, you don't eat, you know, and now we're talking about lowering the amount of money that's required to earn to get Medicaid and other benefits when there's tons of jobs out there they could get if they wanted. But, you know, and then I drive out of Lowe's Hardware and I see several standing on the corner holding a sign wanting some money to do whatever. And I'm thinking, if you can stand there, why can't you work at McDonald's? You know, something. I guess as a frustrated, just normal, everyday person, why do we enable people not to work by making it so easy to get benefits when most of us are working, providing, and struggling to get help to come help us do the jobs we're already doing?
Oh, no. And it is a vicious cycle created by the federal government. And until we can't stop it. We've tried to turn away federal money. We've tried to turn away things that are there. They're just going direct to the citizens. They're going direct to the citizens and giving money. You know, for a long time, if you had children at home, you got $600 a month every month for those children, as long as your income didn't exceed a certain amount of money. You know, we were incentivizing people not to go to work. Then you can get me started on minimum wage. Minimum wage has hurt most businesses. Prices have had to go up ridiculously. Minimum wage was intended to be entry level. It was intended to train people, not to become a livable wage. A livable wage is what you get educated for. A livable wage is what you get trained for. A livable wage is why you come to work every day and do the best job you can, because you want more money. You know, you want more money. I have not seen service get better at McDonald's by paying $15 an hour. I've actually seen it get worse, but we won't talk about that. Chick-fil-A does great with whatever they do. And I understand you have the best breastfeeder in the world right now. My grandson just went to work there. Oh, he chopped lettuce. Okay. He wants to be a chef, so yeah, it's a good start. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What about school safety?
There are lots of grants in here for school safety and attempting to do that. Here's one of my things about school safety is that systemic of society, that we are accepting less and less proper behavior from people. Because I spoke at a school group not long ago as an advanced class in history and civics, and I said, you know, do you feel safe here? You know, what's the next step? Do we put razor wire and fence around the school to try to protect them? Who's to say you can't get a gun out there and shoot inside? I mean, what do we do to make our kids feel safe? I mean, we've talked about allowing teachers to be armed if they're trained and they've got their concealed carry. I mean, what do? We are welcoming ideas on school safety. welcoming ideas on school safety. But how much, I mean, my husband and I were talking about when he was in high school, they carried their guns to school. They were laid up in the back of the truck where they'd been hunting that morning. And now that would have been the end of the world if somebody showed up with a rifle on a rack in their school. The pocket knives where they might exchange them. And we didn't have problems. So what was the difference then versus now? I mean, the whole, defund the police, the whole acceptable to protest because you're not happy and you can destroy everybody else's property. I don't think we had that here. Because as, I forgot his name, and that won't play in a small town. It won't play in a small town, but you should see what they're doing in the big towns. And you think we have school safety problems? Go down there and see. But I think a lot of it is expectation of the students, the ability to allow discipline in the schools. And when I first got to Raleigh, that was one of the things that shocked me, is they didn't want discipline in the schools. The Democrats did not want discipline in the schools. They were at the point of wanting, before you could discipline a child, they have the ability to go before the school board with an attorney. Now, if I got in trouble at school, I got in trouble at home. Instead, we've got parents that come in now and say, how dare you speak to my child that way? I'm sorry, I got two. And if I ever got a call from the school, I would ask the kid first, what did you do? Not what did the school do to you? What is it you did that got you in trouble? We will come to a meeting of the minds. But we have so many parents today that aren't doing that. That's what's wrecking the system. The threats of lawsuits, that's what's wrecking the system. We got to get past it. And exactly how we get past it is what we're trying to find. Okay? Y'all get me on a roll, I'll be here for a while. I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Well, and I didn't do that kind of suing because I thought that was wrong.
You got any new attorney jokes?
No, I don't get it. I don't get any attorney jokes. Okay. Anything else? I'll turn it over to John. You can close us out. You're welcome.